Welcome to Movie Explained in English. A brilliant neurosurgeon has a car accident and is no longer able to operate because he has an arm injury. While trying to heal himself, he gains superpowers and is now able to save people a different way. Today we will recap the story of the 2016 movie Doctor Strange. The story begins in a library at a Buddhist temple. Several villains in dark hooded cloaks enter. They find the librarian putting one of the oldest books in its place, the Book of Cagliostro. The villains surround the librarian, creating fiery weapons with their hands and attacking him. After performing a strange ritual, the librarian passes away, and the leader of the villains, named Caecilius, tears several pages from the Book of Cagliostro. The thieves attempt to flee, but a woman in a yellow cloak enters the library. She warns the thieves that the stolen spell will bring only sorrow. Passing through a sphere of fire, the villains flee onto the streets of modern New York. The woman in the yellow cloak follows them and creates a mirror dimension from which it is impossible to interact with the real world. In this mirror dimension, the woman alters the laws of gravity and challenges the villains to a fight while standing on the wall of a house. She creates fiery weapons with which she easily dispatches her foes. Caecilius and a few of his henchmen manage to escape through a portal. After that, the woman herself leaves the mirror dimension and, having removed her hood, walks out into the streets of New York. Meanwhile, a brilliant and famous neurosurgeon named Stephen Strange prepares for another operation. In doing so, the doctor does not strain at all. He even allows himself to listen to music during the complicated operation and impress the assistants with his erudition. Suddenly an alarmed colleague of Dr. Strange, a surgeon named Christine, runs up to the operating room door. She asks Stephen to save another patient immediately. A bullet has struck his brain, and no one believes the patient will survive. Dr. Strange, however, has a different view of the situation. He and Christine urgently begin an operation to remove the bullet. Stephen performs the surgery almost blindly, as there is no time for a brain scan. He successfully removes the bullet and saves the patient, showing off his genius to his colleagues. After the surgery, Christine admires Stephen's work, but advises him not to become too cocky. It turns out that the two used to date and then broke up because of his arrogance. Christine teases her former boyfriend and he invites her to go with him later that evening to a neurosurgery conference. Christine declines, and Strange goes home to get ready for the event. He gets all dressed up and gets behind the wheel of his fancy Lamborghini. Stephen drives at breakneck speed and at the same time chooses a new and interesting patient. Looking at the brain scan, Strange fails to cope with the controls and flies off the track into a cliff. Because of the accident, he is seriously injured and loses consciousness. The injured Stephen wakes up already in a hospital bed after multiple surgeries. Christine sits beside him and assures his former boyfriend that he will live. But Stephen's hands are severely damaged, with torn ligaments, vessels, and nerves in both hands. This means that the man can no longer be a neurosurgeon. Stephen becomes distraught as he examines his unruly, trembling hands. He thinks he would have performed this type of surgery himself much more successfully. Strange spends a lot of money on new surgeries and rehabilitation, but his hands still don't work well. The rehabilitator tries his best to encourage Stephen and tells him about a patient who, after breaking his spine, was paralyzed below the chest, but then fully recovered and was able to walk again. Strange does not believe this story and asks to see that patient's medical records. The rehabilitator promises to find it. Meanwhile, Stephen fails at routine activities like shaving or writing and is denied a request for another surgery. The man becomes furious and takes his anger out on Christine, who at this point brings him food at home. The girl asks him to come to terms with it and believe that work is not the only thing that gives meaning to life. In response, Stephen angrily insults Christine and chases her out of his house. He then receives the medical records of the patient named Jonathan, who has managed to recover from his paralysis, and decides to meet with him. Jonathan is just playing basketball when Strange finds him. The doctor looks at the basketball player with amazement and begs him to reveal the secret of his miraculous recovery. After a little hesitation, Jonathan tells him that after an unsuccessful rehabilitation of his body, he decided to take up spiritual practices. The man found a teacher, his spirit was set free, and then his body was able to heal itself. He could have continued to practice enlightenment, but he decided to return to his usual life. The place where Jonathan found a teacher was called Kamar Taj. Impressed, Stephen travels to Nepal in search of the mysterious Kamar Taj. But there is very little information about it, so the man is forced to wander the streets of Kathmandu and harass passers-by with inquiries. Suddenly a mysterious man in a raincoat notices Stephen and begins to follow him. Strange continues to wander and finds himself in a nook, where he is attacked by Nepalese goons. The man in the cape comes to his aid, He easily disarms Stephen's attackers and offers to take him to Kamar Taj. The man's name is Karl Mordo, and he advises Strange to leave his wits behind the threshold of Kamar Taj. In this temple-like place, Stephen is treated to tea, and a great ancient teacher, the same woman who was involved in the fight with Caecilius, immediately approaches him. The Ancient One, as her students call her, knows all about Strange and says that his own body can be made to repair itself. The doctor immediately tries to look at the teacher's methods from a medical perspective, but fails to see any logic. The Ancient One shows Stephen images of chakras, acupuncture, and MRI scans, saying that all of these methods are correct but one-sided. Her methodology, on the other hand, is based on the power of faith. Stephen ridicules the teacher's statements and scoffs at her. Then the Ancient One punches Strange in the chest, thus pushing his astral body out of the physical one. The doctor still doesn't believe in the power of faith and suspects something was slipped into his tea. But the Ancient One does not give up, and with a touch to Stephen's forehead, she reveals his inner eye. The astral body flies out of the man's body again and is transported to distant space in a split second. Here Stephen sees whole worlds being born and passing away. The Ancient One says that the unity of matter and thought is the basis of the universe, ideas shape reality. Stephen can see this by looking at his hand, from which many little brushes grow. In addition, there are vast spaces in the universe at the mercy of dark elements that are older than time itself. Seeing all this, Stephen returns to his body. He now has faith and asks to be taught this art. But the Ancient One casts him out beyond the doors of Kamar Taj. Over the course of 5 hours, Stephen begs to be let back in. The Ancient One feels that Strange has too much stubbornness, too much pride, too much arrogance. And with these qualities, he reminds her of Caecilius, a former apprentice who chose the wrong side. But Mordo assures her that by using a spell from Cagliostro's book, Caecilius can do a lot of damage, so Kamar Taj needs people like Strange. Finally, the doctor is accepted back and taken as an apprentice. Before going to bed, Stephen looks at his watch, which he treasures very much. It is a gift from Christine, and Strange actually does love her, but because of his arrogance he is unable to show affection. The next day, the Ancient One teaches Stephen to draw energy from other dimensions of the multiverse to create fiery weapons for defense and attack. The man begins to believe that he, too, will succeed. He becomes a regular visitor to the local library and reads many books on magic and ethereal matters. Here he finds the very same book of Cagliostro. Librarian Wong does not forbid him to touch it, but he is sure that Stephen will not understand anything in it. The doctor nevertheless opens the book and sees that several pages are missing. The spells in this book can be used to control time. This is exactly what Caecilius, who is already casting a spell from the stolen page, drawing a fiery symbol in the air, seeks to do. In doing so, he and his henchmen, who call themselves zealots, change in appearance, taking on satanic characteristics. In this way Caecilius summons a dark god from another dimension, causing the world to begin to transform. Meanwhile, in Kamar Taj, Strange continues to study magical techniques. He tries to master the double ring, which helps the wizard create portals and travel through the multiverse. Stephen believes that, due to the injury to his hands, he will not be able to master this art. Then the Ancient One urges him to silence his ego and submit to the elements. She leads Strange to the top of Everest and leaves him there through the portal. Now Stephen must free his mind to create the same portal and leave the cold summit. The right motivation, Strange finally succeeds. Later uses this skill to borrow books from the library, which Wong does not yet allow him to read. Seeing Stephen's achievements, the Ancient One shows him the mirror dimension. Since it does not affect the real world, it is very convenient to train there. You can get out of it by creating a portal using the double ring. The teacher tells him that mages from Kamar Taj are not only engaged in expanding consciousness, but also repel countless attacks from other universes. However, the teacher does not go into detail yet, so as not to frighten Stephen. Later, Strange learns more about Caecilius. It turns out that the villain switched to the dark side because he stopped trusting the Ancient One. This is not surprising, since the Ancient One keeps all information about herself secret. No one even knows how old she is. Strange becomes familiar with various magical artifacts and learns how to create weapons. He also misses Christine and regularly writes unanswered emails to her. One day Stephen sneaks into the library and starts reading Cagliostro's book. The guy finds a magical artifact, the Eye of Agamotto, and uses it to learn how to control time. Stephen practices on an apple, which changes before his eyes from a whole and fresh fruit to a withered stump. Strange applies the same spell to the torn pages from Cagliostro's book, and they return to their place. The guy reads the spell and discovers a god named Dormammu, who rules the dark dimension and can grant eternal life. Stephen activates the spell, which begins to change everything around him, but then Wong and Mordo come running to him. It turns out that Strange almost breached the time matrix, which is strictly forbidden. Temporal loops, anomalies, and voids can be created in this way. A magician can become stuck and relive the same moment for an eternity. Seeing that Stephen already knows a lot, Mordo and Wong tell him about the true activities of mages. Long ago, the supreme wizard Agamotto built 3 temples of power on Earth, in New York, London, and Hong Kong. Together, the temples form a shield that protects the world from the enemies of our universe. The wizards themselves protect these 3 temples from uninvited guests. For example, from Dormammu, who reigns over the dark dimension, the anti-time. He is the enslaver of the cosmos and destroyer of worlds, and the Earth is his greatest desire. It turns out that Caecilius stole those pages to summon Dormammu to Earth. Upon hearing this, Stephen rushes to leave, for he only wanted to heal his hands, not wage magical wars. But at that moment he suddenly receives news that the temple in London has fallen, and Caecilius already controls the place. A tremendous jolt causes Stephen to enter the temple in New York through the magical gateway and be left alone in it. Behind the front door he sees an ordinary New York street, and inside the temple there are many portals. Finally, the temple guardian appears. He confronts Caecilius and his cohorts at the entrance to the temple. The guardian fights bravely, but is soon defeated. After that, the evil zealots begin to hunt Stephen down. Although the man's fighting skills are not yet at the highest level, he fights back with dignity. Due to the fact that Caecilius creates a mirror dimension, Strange has a hard time. However, it helps him expel the zealots to other dimensions through the portals. A duel between Stephen and Caecilius ensues, and suddenly a special artifact, the Cloak of Levitation, comes to the Doctor's aid. The cloak itself tells Strange in which direction to move. Thus, he manages to secure Caecilius in a metal suit that restricts his movements. The villain makes pathetic, nonsensical speeches, declaring that many will become a few, then one. And after that, Caecilius proceeds to lure Stephen to the dark side. He believes that Dormammu can grant all of Earth's inhabitants freedom from time and eternal life. Also, Caecilius believes that the Ancient One herself benefits from Dormammu, which is why she has lived for centuries. She does not uphold the laws of nature, but goes against them. But Stephen sees that Caecilius has become a ruthless criminal by serving Dormammu, which means that the god of the dark dimension cannot be trusted. Suddenly, Strange is attacked from behind by one of the surviving zealots and seriously wounds him. The Cloak of Levitation immediately pounces on the offender to give Stephen a chance to escape. The wounded Strange creates a portal, goes to the hospital and finds Christine there. They rush to the operating room, and the girl tries to save Stephen. He loses consciousness and separates his astral body from his physical one. Being a ghost, Strange tells Christine how to save his body. The girl is terribly frightened, but manages to get a grip on herself and continues to give Stephen medical attention. At this time, the zealot also separates his astral body and travels to the hospital following Strange. A battle ensues between the 2 astral bodies. They hurl each other into the walls, causing a power outage in the hospital. At some point, Stephen's heart stops beating in his physical body. Christine restarts it with a defibrillator. For the astral Stephen, this powerful flow of electricity allows him to affect the enemy more effectively. After the second discharge, the villain is knocked away in both the astral and physical body. Stephen, on the other hand, returns to life on the operating table. Christine stitches up the guy's wound and scolds him for being absent for so long, then reappears like this. Finally, Strange finds the strength to apologize to Christine for all the rude words and arrogant actions. He tells the girl about the Kamar Taj, and Christine decides it's a cult. Stephen laughs and says he has to go to a cult meeting. He shows the girl a portal to the temple and hides in it. Christine has no choice but to believe him. At the temple, Strange puts on his cloak and sees that Caecilius has escaped. Mordo and the Ancient One arrive. Stephen tells him that the villain crumbs the universe even beyond the mirror dimension, contrary to the laws of nature. Upon learning of Strange's exploits, the Ancient One suggests that he become master of the New York Temple and defend it with all his might. But Stephen says that he is first and foremost a doctor and can't deal with people, even if they are criminals. The Ancient One believes that this shows his selfishness, not his humanism. Then Strange points out that the Supreme Teacher is no saint either, since she got involved with Dormammu to prolong her life and violate the laws of nature. The Ancient One has nothing to object, and she elegantly evades the answer. Stephen and Mordo remain in the New York Temple alone. Then the Zealots arrive again.
Strange immediately activates the mirror dimension so that the villains won't hurt anyone in the real world.
But it turns out that because of the connection with Dormammu, Caecilius's power is amplified in the mirror dimension, and he becomes almost invincible.
The villain sets terrible traps for Steven and Mordo everywhere, preventing them from leaving.
His magical manipulations cause reality to warp in all directions.
The guys can't find their balance and are forced to keep running on wobbly structures.
Finally, Caecilius catches up with Steven and prepares to deal with him. But then the Ancient One appears in the mirror dimension. Her forehead bears the mark of Dormammu. This makes a strong impression on Mordo, and the man feels betrayed. The Ancient One asks Caecilius to stop and realize that the eternal life Dormammu offers is torment, not paradise. But Caecilius does not believe the Ancient One and attacks her. Eventually he manages to wound his former mentor and use a portal to hurl her down. Steven immediately rushes after the Ancient One. The guy believes she can still be saved, so he brings the woman to the hospital to see Christine. Strange's hands are still shaking, which means he can't operate himself, but he can direct the operation. Suddenly Steven sees the Ancient One's astral body leave the physical body and swiftly move away. Strange's astral body follows the Ancient One and asks her to come back to life. However, the Great Mentor is tired of her incredibly long life. She wants to know what awaits her next. All along, the Ancient One has prolonged her life for the sake of saving the world, not for selfishness. Also, the Mentor explains that she didn't heal the paralyzed Jonathan, she only taught him how to channel the flow of cosmic energy into his body. That is, the guy walks with the help of magic. Finally, the Ancient One asks Steven to continue her work and take Mordo as his sidekick, because the guys complement each other perfectly. The Ancient One squeezes Strange's hand and disappears into thin air. Steven walks over to Christine and embraces her. He now believes the girl's words that there is more to life than just work and that it is possible to save people in other ways. Christine cries, kisses Steven on the cheek and leaves for another operation. And Strange prepares for the fateful fight. Meanwhile, the Zealots, led by Caecilius, appear near the temple in Hong Kong. The mages of Kamar Taj and Wong rush out to meet them. The battle for the temple begins. Steven arrives at the ruined New York temple. A frustrated Mordo says it is the Ancient One's fault that the world is now falling apart. It is because of her sanctimony that Caecilius has defected to the dark side and called Dormammu to Earth. Strange asks his friend to pull himself together and fight the enemy. The pair go to the Hong Kong temple and see that it, too, has already been destroyed, and the dark dimension of Dormammu is coming to Earth. Mordo thinks it's the end of the world, but Strange is willing to argue with him. Suddenly he activates Agamotto's eye, rewinding all events. Destroyed buildings are reassembled brick by brick, and people come back to life. However, it has no effect on the Zealots, for they have contacted the dark dimension, where there is no time. Meanwhile, Wong, along with others, comes back to life and prepares to defend the temple once more. The friends manage to disarm the Zealots for a while, but when the temple is restored, the villains will attack again, so the wizards need to be ready. And so it happens, but now Steven loses control of time, and it stops completely. The dark dimension is closing in and about to finally win. Suddenly Strange realizes that if you come to the anti-time dimension with the Eye of Agamotto, an anomaly is bound to happen. The guy rides back to Dormammu and creates a locked time loop. At first, Dormammu does not understand what is happening. Steven offers to negotiate with him, but the anti-time lord won't listen. He dispenses with Strange, but the time loop repeats from the beginning. Steven comes to negotiate again, and Dormammu takes him out again. The third time, the Lord of the Dark Dimension senses something wrong, and Steven tells him how the time loop works. Strange is willing to relive it time after time for all eternity, just to distract Dormammu and keep him from consuming the Earth. The guy isn't trying to win, all he cares about is keeping Dormammu captive. Finally, the Dark Lord gets fed up and agrees to negotiate. Steven demands that Dormammu take the Zealots and leave his universe alone. After that, Strange returns to the Hong Kong temple and enjoys the loss of Caecilius. The Zealots change dramatically in appearance and fly away into the dark dimension. And humans are no longer threatened by it. Afterwards, Steven, with the help of Agamotto's eye, restores the temple. Only Mordo is dissatisfied with everything that has happened. He is convinced that sooner or later he will have to pay for breaking the laws of nature. Mordo trusts no one else and decides to go his own way. Steven puts Agamotto's eye back where it belongs and decides not to play with time anymore. Wong praises him for this decision and informs him that news of the Ancient One's departure will soon be known in every corner of the multiverse. Kamar Taj needs to prepare for possible attacks. In the meantime, Stephen sets out to rebuild and protect the New York Temple. Determined, he puts on his favorite watch, a gift from Christine. Later, Strange tracks down individuals and beings from other worlds that might be dangerous to Earth. To do this, he meets Thor at his temple, treats him to a beer, and asks him to tell him about his half-brother Loki. Thor explains that he and Loki are only in New York because they are looking for their father here. Strange offers to help the brothers find Odin so that they can return home without delay. At the meantime, Mordo comes to Jonathan and blames the man for stealing magic and cheating nature. Mordo believes that magic must be justified and that Jonathan is not worthy of it. The enraged sorcerer takes away Jonathan's magical powers and ability to walk. The fellow falls, unable to feel his limbs. In Mordo's opinion, there are too many sorcerers in the world and he is going to correct that. That's my explanation for the movie, Doctor Strange.
Doctor Strange is an American action-adventure superhero movie based on the Marvel comic character, which was released in the year 2016. Before leaving, if you like the video, please subscribe the channel. Your one click means a lot for us. Subscribe for more videos like this. So what do you guys think about the movie? Write in the comment. Turn on the notification, and leave a like to help the channel out. Thank you for watching.